Greetings, YouTube. If you watched James White Q&A about Flesh and Blood recently, you'll notice that he said,
especially a lot of the talismans and amulets, I know they look kind of like, so-so on the surface, but some of those things are better than people are giving them credit for yet. And decks are going to need 3 of these cards in the future. I'm just telling you, hot tip, hot tip.
So I thought it would be fun to go through all of the trinkets, amulets, potions, talismans from Everfest and give them a little rating about how good I think they are. Before we get into the video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. As you see my takes on these trinkets, and if you disagree or agree with any of my takes, then go ahead and comment what you think. So let's go ahead with the first one, and that will be Amulet of Assertiveness. So this one I feel has a very strong effect, of course. Banishing off the top and being able to play another card, especially in an aggressive deck, basically nets you a potential 6-card hand. However, I do think the condition of activating it while you have 4 or more cards in hand is quite difficult to pull off. So I'm not too sold on this one personally. I think there's definitely potential with maybe future cards, but I'll probably put this one in like a C tier for now. Right, the next card will be Amulet of Echoes. So this one is interesting. I could see it having potential play against something like Ninja that runs the 100 wins line and putting this out so they basically can't play that line, or at least can't play it effectively. And it's something your opponent has to play around if it affects them. But for the most part, I don't see this having a huge impact. I don't imagine there are too many decks that consistently play the same card twice in a turn. So I will also be putting this one probably in C tier. Next one up, we have Amulet of Havencall. So this card, I think is interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if you can, for example, as an Oldhim or Starvo, activate Crown of Seeds with your last card, hold priority, activate Amulet of Havencall, bring out Rally the Rearguard, then your arsenal would go to the bottom, you'll draw a card, and then you could activate Rally the Rearguard's effect and discard a card, giving it +3 defense. That's like the only possible situation I could think of, and I don't even know if that's legal, if you can hold priority and react to an instant with a defense reaction. So for the most part, this amulet I'm also not too big on. It also forces you to play Rally the Rearguard, which I don't think is a great addition to many decks. I'll probably also put it in C tier. I don't think it's like unusable, but I just don't see it having a place in the meta right now. All right, next up, Amulet of Ignition. So I think this amulet is probably the best one I've seen so far. I think just the effect it has a lot of long-term potential in the game, because as the game goes on, there will inevitably be weapons or equipment or abilities that cost specifically 1 resource. And having this amulet out and allowing you to activate that ability without pitching a card may be something that's very powerful. So for example, let's say if you're playing Prism back then and you were running the Tome of Divinity and Halo of Illumination package, you could, activate Amulet of Ignition and then Halo for free, and then start popping off on your Tome turns, and that's 1 less card to pitch and gives you essentially more resources with your Vestige of Soul. That's one thing I could see it being used with. You can activate things like Ebb and Fold with it, or basically just any equipment that costs 1 to activate, I imagine would be decent with this card. And I think just as the game goes on and as more armor is printed, this will probably have more use cases. So I'm gonna go ahead and probably put this one in the S tier. Yeah, let's go with S tier for now. All right, next one up, we have Amulet of Intervention. I think this is a very interesting ability. I also think this card is very bad. I don't see any situation where you would want to play this. Just the loss of tempo from playing this card, and I don't see it. It can save you, like, I don't know, if you're at 1 and you're Kodachi locked and you have an Amulet of Intervention out, you can save 1 card from your Kodachi lock. But just the loss, the thing with all of these items is that you're giving up tempo, or you're giving up doing something on an earlier turn for a powerful effect later, and I just don't think the payoff for this card is quite there. So I'm gonna put this one in D tier. Next card, Amulet of Oblation. So this one's interesting. It has like the sort of evergreen effect, the Earth card evergreen, or something like Drone of Brutality. But even still, I also sort of find this card sort of the same as the previous Amulet of Intervention. It's just the payoff doesn't seem very good. If you need to bring cards back, you can run something like Remembrance, which is arguably better because it shuffles back 3 cards. So this one, I don't quite see the use case. There may be a situation in the future where specifically putting something on the bottom of your deck is important. Like maybe you're pitch stacking and you're like, I don't know, playing Chain or something. But Chain's gonna Living Legend soon anyway, so that doesn't really count. But just an example of like the ability to put something specifically on the bottom of your deck may be powerful in pitch stacking, but just with how fast the game is going right now, I don't see this card being played for the foreseeable future. So I'm gonna put this one in D tier also. Next up, we have Clarity Potion. I don't think this card is very good. It simply just doesn't do enough. The fact that, you know, Kanos are running potions, but they're not running this potion, which is basically a talismanic lens, kind of speaks to the strength of the card. It's just not quite there. I think maybe in the future, even if you did want to opt, you could always just play cards like Whisper of the Oracle or things like that. But the point of this is obviously to bank the effect and save it for a later turn when you need it. But I think even then, it's not quite there. I don't really see huge use cases for this card, so I'm gonna also put this one in D tier. All right, next potion. Healing Potion. So when you play the Healing Potion, you lose your action point. But when you activate its effect on your turn to gain 2 life, you do have Go Again. I also think this card is just bad. If you need healing, I'd argue Sigil of Solace is a much better card, even though it's red. The fact is, if you're playing this card in your deck, it means you want to play it. If you wanted to pitch it as a blue, you would simply run a different blue that had more value, like was able to block or something. So the fact that you're playing this card means you want to play it. And I see no reason why you would want to play this over just a red Sigil of Solace. Now, you could argue there may be a deck in the future that wants all those sources of healing. The red sigils, the yellow sigils, Healing Potion, you know, you name it. But I don't know. I also think this card is not very good. So I'm going to put this one in D tier also. Next potion, we have Potion of Seeing. Okay. So this one also uses your action point. But this potion is an instant, so you can play it and activate its effect on the same turn. I think Potion of Seeing is very interesting because Flesh and Blood is not like most card games where knowing what's in your opponent's hand is more valuable simply because your hand basically refreshes every turn. So seeing your opponent's hand on one specific turn may be useful, but I currently don't see the value in it right now. I feel like most good players will play around certain cards or expect certain cards from opponents, and just giving up a card and an action point to confirm what you're suspecting seems like too tall of a cost to pay. There may be a situation in the future where you absolutely need to know what's in your opponent's hand and you can, like, I don't know, maybe play Chains of Eminence on them or something, but like I also think this is just too, it's not quite good enough, so I'll put this in D tier also. Next one, we have Potion of Deja Vu. I don't think I needed to speak too much about this card. This card is obviously really good. Deceased play in Kano. The combos you can do with it are very big brain, very crazy. You pitch like crazy, you activate your potion, you stack on top, and then you start Kanoing for the perfect cards. It's a good card. Nothing much to say there. I'll put this in S tier. Next one, we have Potion of Ironhide. Now this one I think has also good potential compared to other cards simply because losing your action point is bad, but in a deck that is very defensive or is trying to fatigue or play the attrition game against the opponent, you don't really need that action point, because if you're like your Guardian, like what, you're gonna swing hammer for 4, like you might as well play this potion. And this potion, if you crack it on the right turn, basically blocks for 4. So, and also like hits important breakpoints for enemy cards. If they're like snatching for 4, you can block with 1 card. I think this card has a lot of potential. I could imagine like an Oldhim deck running this card. This card's interesting for sure. I think it has good potential. I wouldn't say it's like overpowered or anything or like a staple, but I definitely see it having potential play. So I'm gonna put this one in A tier. Next one we have Potion of Luck. So this one again also costs your action point. I think I like this card simply for the one interaction it has with Earthlore Bounty, where if you're using Earthlore Bounty on like a Guardian and you activate Potion of Luck and shuffle 5 cards, you can make 5 Seismic Surges. And since the effect is instant, you could do it on your opponent's turn, draw into like a Pulverize, and have 5 Seismic Surges. So that's really cool. And I think just resetting your hand is also just a powerful effect in general, but I don't know if it's quite worth it to give up tempo on your turn. Unless maybe you're playing like a class that can cheat action points, sort of like Chain or something along those lines. Or like a Rune Blade where you can Creepers into a double action point, and then playing a potion is much easier to do. Or maybe you're playing Rhinar, you use your Scab Skins and you can put down more potions. I think this one is okay. I wouldn't say it's terrible, I wouldn't say it's great, so I'll probably put it in the B tier. Talisman of Balance. I think this card it probably has high highs and very low lows, just because these talismans are not effects you can activate on like by your own control. Basically, like they activate when a certain condition is met no matter what, so you kind of have to play around that. But if you do play around that well enough, you can net yourself a pretty good advantage. So playing this early and then having a turn where you just go off and you play all 4 or 5 cards and you have nothing to arsenal, and your opponent does, and you have this out and you can just arsenal the top card and gain another 5 card hand back to back, I think is decent. But at the same time, I feel like there's just the randomness involved with arsenaling the top card of your deck and not knowing what it is. You know, if you're playing a class that doesn't play out of Arsenal very well, or doesn't have like Crown or something, and you arsenal a really bad card that you can't get out, then it might just lose the game on the spot. But if you're playing a deck that has like, you know, very aggressive, like a ninja or even a warrior like Dorinthia, and everything's an attack reaction that you can play for the most part, then you should be fine with just arsenaling whatever card comes your way. But I think this card might see some play. It has some potential, but once again, I don't see it as like very good or very bad. So I'll probably put it in B tier. Yeah, let's go with B tier. Next up, we have Talisman of Cremation. So this card, I personally feel like this is one of the cards that James White personally had in mind when he said that players are going to need 3 ofs. I think this card specifically has play against the new Draconic heroes that are coming out. We've seen Thaw, which has a graveyard effect, and so we can expect more Draconic cards to have powerful graveyard effects. And I think if you are a class that is able to play from Banish, so things like Dorinthia, Katsu, Chain, Levia, things like that, having this card to counter Draconic heroes might be something that, you know, you have in your sideboard plan depending on the meta. I think this card will see play, assuming the Draconic heroes are good and they have good cards that play from their graveyard. But just the fact that there's a limited amount of heroes that play from Banish means that I don't expect this card to like be a staple anytime soon. But I figure as the game goes on and as more heroes are capable of doing more things, like playing from Banish or having cards that play from graveyard, I think this card will probably become a staple in the future. So I'm gonna put this one in S tier. That is my other hot take, or hot tip, as James White would say. Next card, Talisman of Featherfoot. So this card is interesting. Gaining exactly +1 is not something that is easily done. Art of War is an example off the top of my head that will give +1 to an attack. I'm not sure how useful this is. There aren't too many classes that want Go Again that don't already have access to it. And I'm trying to imagine what classes are able to give +1 to an attack but don't have easy access to Go Again. So nothing's really popping up in my head for the most part, but I do feel like this effect is powerful enough to warrant running it in certain lists maybe in the future as time goes on. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this one in B tier also. All right, next one, Talisman of Recompense. So this card is basically if you're playing a very aggressive deck with a lot of red cards and all of a sudden you draw a 4 red hand and you need 1 blue. If you have a Talisman of Recompense, you can pitch a red, gain 3 resources, and just go about your turn. And the card does have Go Again, so it doesn't lose your action points, so you won't completely ruin the turn you play it. but it's also, you know, one less card that is doing something on the turn that you play it. So how valuable is that? I'm not sure, but I don't think this card is bad. I actually, before the bans in ProQuest Season 1, I lost to a Viserai that in the top 8 that ran Talisman of Recompense, and it seemed to work out for him. So I don't think the card is bad. I would probably put it... I'd probably put it in B tier. Like, I think the card is good, but I also feel like in the right decks, it's not very necessary, and the effect isn't so powerful that it warrants higher than a B rating. Like, I think if anything, it just adds a level of consistency to your game, but I feel like you can sort of find that level of consistency through deck building, and you won't necessarily need this card. But maybe there is situations in the future where you just want to run like all reds and you need these talismans. Maybe Dromai or something, who knows. Alright, next one. Talisman of Tithes. This card's interesting. In testing, I've had friends play it against me on Starvo, so when I Crown of Seeds, I don't draw a card. It's... I don't know. I don't think this card is very good. The opponent has to specifically draw during your action phase. So that means they have to draw from an effect of an instant or something like that. Or maybe a future defense reaction draws them a card or something, who knows. But I'm not too in love with this card, but I don't think it's like hot garbage either. So I'll put it in C tier probably. Alright, and then last one, Talisman of Warfare. This card I think has a very powerful effect. There aren't too many classes that specifically swing for 2. I think this is definitely something you might see in like warrior decks. For example, like Axis Dorinthia, their first axe swing is for 2, or if Kasai ever comes to constructed, her first Centauri Saber will hit for 2. I definitely think this has potential to see play. It would be hard to sort of work around though, because you can't exactly control when it goes off. It depends on how your opponent blocks or if they don't block, and if you also have a card in arsenal at the same time, then it just makes it hard. But there's definitely a level, there's some bluffing to it also. Like if you're a warrior and you swing for 2 and you have a card in arsenal, maybe your opponent will just take it and lose their card in arsenal because they want you to blow up your arsenal. But in your arsenal is an attack reaction, and so all of a sudden, you know, you Blade Runner or you like Razor Reflex and you just give +3, and then actually no, but then they wouldn't take 2 damage anymore. Never mind, I take that back. New situation. You swing for 2, your opponent blocks for 3, then you Razor Reflex for 3, deals exactly 2, and you blow up their arsenal. There we go. That's the better example. So I think this has some potential. I would say it's pretty good. So I would probably put this one in A tier. And these that was the last trinket for Everfest. So these were my thoughts. Looking over it again, I'm not sure I would change anything. This is probably how I feel about the trinkets. I think Deja Vu is probably just the best trinket at the moment, the best potion, just because it already sees play in like a high level deck, or a very competitive deck, so there's no reason it should be anywhere lower. Ignition and Cremation, I would say, are my 2 guesses for the most powerful trinkets, other than a Deja Vu. I just think as the game goes on, there will inevitably be situations where these cards will be good. A tier, also just powerful effects, may see play in the right deck. B tier is like, can maybe be good, maybe not super necessary. C tier is, I don't really see a use case for it now, but maybe in the future there will be. And D tier is just the trinkets that I think won't ever see play. I think they're just not good, but you know, I might be wrong. And so that was it for this video. Like I said before, be sure to let me know what you think in the comments. If you disagree with any of my takes, you would change anything in this tier list. And make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.